Secrets, poison, and quiet suspicion surrounded Major Herbert Rowse Armstrong, a respected solicitor in a peaceful town. Known as the Hay Poisoner, his story shocked the nation. Did he murder his wife and try to kill his rival? Or was he wrongly accused? Today, we uncover the eerie case that turned a trusted man into a chilling mystery. Armstrong was born on 13th May 1869 at 23 Princes Square in Plymouth, Devon, into a family of modest means. His family later moved to Edge Hill in Liverpool. In 1887, he was admitted to St. Catherine's College, Cambridge, as a sizar, which meant he received financial support to study. He pursued law and earned his Bachelor of Arts degree. By February 1895, he had qualified as a solicitor. In 1901, Armstrong received his Master of Arts degree from the same college. He began his legal career in Liverpool, but later moved to Newton Abbot for work. In 1906, he applied for and was accepted into a new position in Hay-on-Wye, located in Breconshire. The following year, in 1907, Armstrong married Catherine Mary Friend from West Teignmouth. Together, they had 3 children. Their family included 2 daughters, Eleanor and Margaret, and a son named Pearson. Armstrong's life journey took him from a humble background in Plymouth to a respected legal career, supported by his education at Cambridge and shaped by his work across different towns in England and Wales. His marriage and children marked the start of a new chapter in his personal life alongside his professional growth. The Armstrong family settled in a large house called Mayfield, located in the village of Cusup Dingle near Hay. There, Armstrong established his law firm, Cheese and Armstrong. He was known for his strong work ethic and steadily earned respect within the local community. His dedication and professionalism led to his appointment as clerk to the justices, a position of responsibility and trust. Living in Mayfield and running his firm, Armstrong built a stable and reputable life for himself and his family, becoming a well-regarded figure in both his profession and the village where they made their home. Armstrong joined the volunteer force and was promoted to the rank of captain. When the First World War began in 1914, he was called up for active service. Over time, he advanced to become a major in the Royal Engineers Territorial Force. His military duties took him to France, where he served from May to October 1918. After the war ended, his community and colleagues often referred to him as Major Armstrong to honor his service and rank. This title stayed with him as a mark of respect for his contributions during the war. In May 1919, Catherine Armstrong's health started to get worse. She had some symptoms that the local doctor, Dr. Thomas Hinks, diagnosed as brachial neuritis, a type of nerve pain in the arm. She seemed to get better and didn't need to see Dr. Hinks again for over a year. But in August 1920, her health, both physical and mental, got worse again. Armstrong stayed in regular contact with Dr. Hinks, showed a lot of care for his wife. He also asked for advice from family and friends. Dr. Hinks noticed that Mrs. Armstrong was showing signs of a mental breakdown and thought it was connected to her illness. At the end of August, she was taken to Barnwood, a private mental hospital near Gloucester. When she arrived, she had a fever, vomiting, unusual heart sounds, and protein in her urine. She also had partial paralysis in her hands and feet, weak muscles, and was having delusions. While at Barnwood, Mrs. Armstrong's health began to get better, and she was allowed to return home on 22nd of January, 1921. But soon after coming back, her condition worsened again, and she died a month later on 22nd February, 1921, at the age of 48. Dr. Hinks was confused by her symptoms, but still wrote on the death certificate that she died from gastritis, made worse by heart disease and kidney problems. From the outside, Armstrong seemed caring and patient toward his wife. He would read to her in the evenings while sitting at her bedside and left his office early when he could be with her. It appears there were issues in their marriage. Writers who have looked into the case believe the marriage was unhappy, mostly because Mrs. Armstrong was said to be controlling toward her husband. Still, the exact nature of their relationship isn't completely known. Many people believed that Mrs. Armstrong was a very unpleasant person who often insulted and embarrassed her husband in front of others. Also, even though the local newspaper called her a popular hay lady, very few people came to her funeral. On the other hand, during the times she was away from her husband, whether in hospitals or when he was away for war, she was said to have wanted the family to be together again as soon as possible. Whatever the full truth was, Armstrong's time in the First World War gave him new experiences. He had several affairs and also went to local dances in Hay, where he flirted with young women. On the day Mrs. Armstrong died, the house staff closed all the curtains to show respect. But the first thing Armstrong did when he got home from work was to open them again. Oswald Martin was the only other solicitor in Hay who competed with Armstrong. They were working for opposite sides in a property deal involving the Vale Newid estate. This deal could have ended badly for Armstrong's client, and Armstrong might have had to pay a lot of money to Martin's client. The full details of the deal are still unclear. Martin later said there was a problem with the property ownership documents. It seemed that the money Armstrong had received as a deposit for the sale had disappeared. Martin kept asking Armstrong to finish the sale, but Armstrong kept delaying it. By the time of Armstrong's trial, the sale still hadn't been completed. On 26 October 1921, Armstrong invited Martin to his house for a meeting. When Martin arrived, he found that tea had been prepared with cakes and buttered scones. Martin probably thought Armstrong wanted to talk about the property deal, but instead, they only talked about everyday topics and work matters. Martin could have brought up the deal himself, but he didn't. Armstrong talked about feeling lonely after his wife's death. During the tea, Armstrong picked up a scone, said, "Excuse fingers," and gave it to Martin, who ate it. After going home, Martin became very sick. Martin's father-in-law, John Davies, was the town's chemist. He had sold arsenic to Armstrong a few times. Armstrong had claimed he needed it to kill dandelions, even though it was autumn and there were only about 20 dandelions in the garden of Mayfield, the Armstrongs' home. The chemist became suspicious when Martin suddenly became ill. When Martin told him he had just been to tea at Mayfield, Davies became even more suspicious. At the same time, Dr. Hinks noticed that Martin's symptoms were very similar to those of Catherine Armstrong. Hinks, Martin, and Davies discussed the matter, and Davies warned the Martins not to accept anything from Armstrong. It was later found that a few weeks before the tea at Mayfield, the Martins had received a box of chocolates from an unknown sender. Martin's sister-in-law ate some and became very sick. Luckily, some chocolates were left, but when they were checked, a few were found to have tiny holes at the bottom, like they had been injected with something. Dr. Hinks contacted the Home Office and told them what he suspected had happened to Martin. He also shared his concerns about the death of Mrs. Armstrong. Tests were done on the chocolates and on Martin's urine, and both were found to contain arsenic. The Home Office then gave the case to Scotland Yard. During this time, Armstrong kept sending Martin more invitations to tea, which Martin found harder and harder to politely turn down. Scotland Yard worked slowly to avoid making Armstrong suspicious. On 31st December 1921, they arrested him and charged him with trying to kill Oswald Martin. Armstrong said he was innocent. When police arrested him, They found a packet of arsenic in his pocket and many more at his home. They also dug up Mrs. Armstrong's body, and the well-known Home Office pathologist Bernard Spilsbury examined it. Even 10 months after her death, her body still had a lot of arsenic. On 19 January 1922, Armstrong was charged with the deliberate murder of his wife. During the hearing, Armstrong kept saying, "I repeat what I said before. I am absolutely innocent." Armstrong's trial for his wife's murder started on the 3rd April 1922 at Hereford, with Mr. Justice Darling as the judge. Armstrong was defended by Sir Henry Curtis Bennett, one of the top criminal lawyers at the time. The case attracted a lot of attention from the public and the media. Just a year earlier, another solicitor named Harold Greenwood had been tried at Carmarthen Assizes for poisoning his wife, which had been disguised as a sickness. Greenwood was found not guilty. In Armstrong's case, some people found it suspicious that the 3 men who reported him to the police included his business rival and his father-in-law. This led some to believe that Armstrong was being set up. Still, even though many thought Armstrong would be found not guilty, the case against him was strong. His wife's body was full of arsenic, and the amount at the time of her death must have been even higher. Armstrong had bought large amounts of arsenic. His defense team had to convince the jury that Mrs. Armstrong had taken the poison herself by somehow getting out of bed, going downstairs, and taking the arsenic without anyone noticing. Or they had to argue that she had been poisoned by accident. But every witness said that near the end, Mrs. Armstrong was almost completely unable to move. Dr. Bernard Spilsbury said that the deadly dose had to have been taken within a day of her death, and Dr. Hinks said it was absolutely impossible for her to have taken it on her own. Armstrong had to explain his use of arsenic. He said he used to put small amounts of arsenic into tiny pouches and squeeze it into the ground near places where dandelions usually grew. When he was arrested, one of these pouches was found on him, but there was no good reason for him to be carrying it around in December when dandelions don't grow. During the trial, Mr. Justice Darling questioned him about this, and Armstrong didn't give a convincing answer. After the trial, 2 possible reasons for Armstrong poisoning his wife were discussed. One was that Armstrong wanted a new wife who was easier to get along with. The second was about a will that Catherine had written in 1917. In that will, most of her property was left to their children, not to Armstrong. But after she died, Armstrong presented a new will that gave him control of her estate. Experts later believed that this will was probably fake. Even before the property sale problem involving the Villeneuve estate, Armstrong's business was already struggling. The sale issues made his financial situation even worse. Still, even though there was a lot of evidence against Armstrong, it was all based on circumstances. No one had actually seen him give poison to his wife. Also, Mrs. Armstrong had sometimes talked about suicide. Some medicines back then contained arsenic, and many people had access to her at their home Mayfield. The prosecution didn't prove that Armstrong, and only Armstrong, gave her the poison. When it came to Oswald Martin, killing him wouldn't have fixed Armstrong's business problems, except for giving him a little more time. Armstrong never admitted guilt. He strongly said he was innocent until the very end. On 13th April 1922, at Shire Hall in Hereford, he was found guilty of murdering his wife. Mr. Justice Darling agreed with the jury's decision and said it was silly and unsupported by any facts to think Mrs. Armstrong had killed herself. He then sentenced Armstrong to death. At the end of the case, Herbert Rowse Armstrong was found guilty of murdering his wife by poisoning her with arsenic. Despite maintaining his innocence until the very end, the court sentenced him to death. His final appeal for a new trial was rejected on 16 May 1922, and he was executed by hanging at Gloucester Prison on the 31st May 1922, carried out by executioner John Ellis. There are two notable accounts of his final moments. John Ellis claimed Armstrong shouted, "Kitty, I'm coming to ye," just before the trapdoor opened, possibly referring to his deceased wife, though this was never confirmed. According to the News of the World, when asked for his last words, Armstrong said, "I am innocent of the crime for which I have been condemned to die." Conclusion. The case of Major Armstrong remains one of the most mysterious and debated in British legal history. Though found guilty and executed, many questions still surround the evidence and his true intentions. Was he a cold-blooded murderer or a victim of circumstances and suspicion? The unanswered details continue to intrigue legal experts and crime enthusiasts alike. Decades later, the story of Major Armstrong serves as a chilling reminder of how complex and shadowed the path to justice can sometimes be.